Greetings, people of God. This is Apostle Mandy Hamilton coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. We would like to encourage you on tonight. We know that the devil has been on his job, but guess what? We're going to be on ours too. Want to tell you a story. There was a young man whose name was John, and he lived with his mother and father and his grandfather. His grandfather was saved and a good man, striving to do all that God would have him to do. But John kept remembering that every time a situation would come up, grandfather would always say it could be worse. John remembered that when he had gotten into a fight at school and came home all beat up and bloody, and his mother was trying to help him get cleaned up, and his father was complaining about the coach allowing such a thing to happen. And grandfather said, well, it could be worse. John also remembered when he was looking for some good news coming through the mail that grandfather and his mother was watching and waiting on the mailman, and John decided that he was going to go to the mailbox. And he saw this check that grandfather was waiting for. But he decided to play a little trick on grandfather. And he put the check in his back pocket, walked in the house, gave his mother the mail, and went straight to the refrigerator to get him a soda. While his mother and grandfather looked through the mail, his mother said, well, the check didn't come, Daddy. I don't know what we're going to do. And grandfather replied, well, all things work together for the good. It could be worse. So John came back in the room and passed them the check and said, I must have overlooked this little piece of mail. So John was really trying to figure out how he was going to get grandfather, because he knew that grandfather's favorite word was, it could be worse. And after a lot of planning and studying and trying to figure it out, John came up with a good solution. Came downstairs one morning and said, grandfather, I had a bad dream. It was real bad, grandfather. And grandfather said, well, what was it, son? He said, grandfather, I dreamt that you were sick. And I was so scared. And grandfather said, well, it was all right because it could have been worse. He said, grandfather, it was worse. You not only was real sick, grandfather, but you died. And grandfather said, don't worry about it. Don't stress. It could be worse. John said, but grandfather, it was worse. Not only were you sick, not only did you die, but you weren't saved and you went to hell. And grandfather said, grandson, I keep telling you that it could be worse. John threw his hands up, looked at his grandfather and said, grandfather, tell me what's worse than being sick and dying and going to hell. Grandfather raised his eyes up over his glasses, looked at his grandson dead in the eye, and said, grandson, it could be true. On tonight, I want you to know that your situation could be worse. Sometimes life just throws bad things our way, and we get distressed and discouraged and feel as though it's the end. But I came to share with you on tonight that you would be able to know that it could be worse. So instead of being upset and discouraged and in a pity pool and feeling like everything is going wrong, say, hey, I bless God for what I have. I praise him. I may not have a car, but guess what? I have 2 feet that work just fine. I may not have the finest house, but guess what? I have a roof over my head. I may not be in the best situation, but I have people who love me, who are there for me, and where I can be all that God would have me to be. So tonight, people of God, know that your situation is not as bad as the enemy would have you to think. Know that there's always a silver lining at the back of that cloud. God bless you.